Leviticus video number 2. I'm currently in Amish country and it's very beautiful out here, so I just want to show a quick view. Alright, so further instructions for the grain offering. These are the instructions regarding the grain offering. Aaron's sons must present this offering to the Lord in front of the altar. The priest of duty will take the grain offering, a handful of choice flour moistened with olive oil, together with all of the frankincense. He will burn this representative portion on the altar as pleasing aroma to the Lord. Aaron and his sons must eat the rest of the flour, but it must be baked without yeast and eaten in a sacred place within the court of the tabernacle. Remember, it must never be prepared with yeast. I have given it to the priests as the share of their special gift presented to me, like the sin offering and guilt offering. It is most holy. Any of Aaron's male descendants may eat from this special gift presented to the Lord. This is the permanent right from generation to generation. Anyone or anything that touches these offerings will become holy. Procedures for the ordination offering. Then the Lord said to Moses, on the day Aaron and his sons are anointed, they must present to the Lord the standard grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour, have to be offered in the morning and have to be offered in the evening. It must be carefully mixed with olive oil and cooked on the griddle. Then slice this grain offering and present it as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. In the generation, the high priest who succeeds Aaron must prepare this same offering. It belongs to the Lord and must be burned up completely. This is the permanent law. All the grain offering of a priest must be burned up entirely. None of it may be eaten. Further instructions for the sin offering. Then the Lord said to Moses, give Aaron and his sons the following instructions regarding the sin offering. The animal given as an offering for sin is the most holy offering, and it must be slaughtered in the Lord's presence at the place where the burnt offering are slaughtered. The priest who offers the sacrifice as a sin offering must eat his portion in a sacred place within the courtyard of the tabernacle. Anyone or anything that touches this sacrificial meat will become holy. If any of the sacrificial blood splatters on a person's clothing, the soiled garment must be washed in a sacred place. If a clay pot is used to boil the sacrificial meat, it must be broken. If a bronze pot is used, it must be scored and thoroughly rinsed with water. Any male from a priest's family may eat from this offering. It must be holy. It is most holy. But the offering for sin may not be eaten if its blood was brought into the tabernacle as an offering for purification in the holy place. It must be completely burned with fire. Further instructions for the guilt offering. These are the instructions for the guilt offering. It is most holy. The animal sacrificed as a guilt offering must be slaughtered at the place where the burnt offering are slaughtered, and the blood must be slaughtered against all sides of the altar. The priest will then offer all its fat on the altar, including the fat of the broad tail, the fat around the internal organs, the 2 kidneys, and the fat around near the loins, and the long lobe of the liver. These are to be removed with the kidneys, and the priest will burn them at an altar as a special gift presented to the Lord. This is a guilt offering. Any male from priest's family may eat the meat. It may be eaten in a sacred place, for it is most holy. The same instructions apply to both the guilt offering and the sin offering. Both belong to the priest, who uses them to purify someone, making that person right with the Lord. In the case of the burnt offering, the priest may keep the hide of the sacrificial animal. Any grain offering that has been baked in the oven, prepared in a pan, or cooked on the griddle belongs to the priest who presents it. All the other grain offerings, whether made of dry flour or flour moistened with olive oil, are to be shared equally among the priests, the descendants of Aaron. Further instructions for the peace offering. These are the instructions regarding the different kinds of peace offerings that may be presented to the Lord. If you present peace offerings as an expression of thanksgiving, the usual animal sacrifice must be accompanied by various kinds of bread made without yeast, 10 cakes mixed with olive oil, wafers spread with oil, and cakes made of choice flour mixed with olive oil. This peace offering of thanksgiving must also be accompanied by loaves of bread made with yeast. One of each kind of bread must be presented as a gift to the Lord. It will then belong to the priest who slaughtered the blood of the peace offering against the altar. The meat of the peace offering of thanksgiving must be eaten on the same day it is offered. None of it may be saved for the next morning. If you bring an offering to fulfill a vow or a voluntary offering, the meat must be eaten on the same day the sacrifice is offered. But whatever is left over may be eaten on the second day. Any meat left over until the 3rd day must be completely burned. If any of the meat from the peace offering is eaten on the 3rd day, the person who presented it will be accepted by the Lord. You will receive no credit for offering it. By then the meat will be contaminated. If you eat it, you will be punished for your sin. Meat that touches anything ceremonially unclean may not be eaten. It must be completely burned up. The rest of the meat may be eaten, but only people who are ceremonially clean. If you are ceremonially clean and you eat meat from a peace offering that was presented to the Lord, you will be cut off from the community. If you touch anything that is unclean, whether it is human defilement or unclean animal or anything unclean, detestable thing, and then eat the meat from a peace offering presented to the Lord, you will be cut off from the community. The forbidden blood and fat. Then the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. You must never eat fat from the cattle, sheep or goat. The fat of an animal found dead or torn to pieces by a wild animal must never be eaten, though it may be used for other purposes. Anyone who eats fat from an animal presented as a special gift to the Lord will be cut off from the community. No matter where you live, you must never consume the blood of any bird or animal. Anyone who consumes blood will be cut off from the community. A portion for the priests. Then the Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel when you present a peace offering to the Lord. Bring part as a gift to the Lord. Present it to the Lord with your own hands as a special gift to the Lord. Bring the fat of an animal together with the breast and lift up the breast as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will burn the fat on the altar, and the breast will belong to Aaron and his descendants. Give the right thigh of your peace offering to the priest as a gift. The right thigh must always be given to the priest who offers the blood and the fat of the peace offering. For I have reserved the breast of a special offering and the right thigh of a sacred offering for the priest. It is the permanent right of Aaron and his descendants to share in the peace offerings brought by the people of Israel. This is the rightful share. The special gift presented to the Lord have been reserved for Aaron and his descendants from the time they were set apart to serve the Lord as priests. On the day they were anointed, the Lord commanded the Israelites to give these portions to the priests as their permanent share from generation to generation. These are the instructions for the burnt offering, the grain offering, the sin offering, and the guilt offering, as well as the ordination offering and the peace offering. The Lord gave these instructions to Moses on Mount Sinai when he commanded to the Israelites to present their offerings to the Lord in the wilderness of Sinai. Ordination of the priests. Then the Lord said to Moses, bring Aaron and his sons along with their sacred garments, the anointing oil, the bull of the sin offering, the 2 rams, the basket of bread made without yeast, and call the entire community of Israel together at the entrance of the tabernacle. So Moses followed the Lord's instructions, and the whole community assembled at the tabernacle entrance. Moses announced to them, this is what the Lord has commanded us to do. Then he presented Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. He put the official tunic on Aaron and tied the sash around his waist. He dressed him in a robe, placed the ephod on him, and attached the ephod securely with its decorative sash. Then Moses placed the chest piece on Aaron and put the Urim and the Thummim inside it. He placed the turban of Aaron's head and attached the gold medallion, the badge of holiness, to the front of his turban, just as the Lord had commanded. When Moses took the anointing oil and anointed the tabernacle and everything in it, making them holy, he sprinkled the oil on the altar 7 times, anointing all of its utensils as well as the wash basin and its stand, making them holy. Then he poured some of the anointing oil on Aaron's head, anointing him and making him holy for his work. Next, Moses presented Aaron's sons. He clothed them in their tunics, tied their sashes around them, and put their special head coverings on them, just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses presented the bull for their sin offering. Aaron and his son laid their hands on the bull's head, and Moses slaughtered it. Moses took some of the blood with his finger, and he put on the 4 horns of the altar to purify it. He poured the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Through this process, he made the altar holy by purifying it. Then Moses took all the fat around the internal organs, the long lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat around them, and he burned them on the altar. He took the rest of the bull, including its hide meat and its dung, and burned it in the fire outside the camp, just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses presented the ram for their burnt offering. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the ram's head, and Moses slaughtered it. Then Moses took the ram's blood and splattered it against the side of the altar. Then he cut the ram into pieces, and he burned the head, some of the pieces, and the fat of the altar. After washing the internal organs and the legs with water, Moses burned the entire ram on the altar as a burnt offering. It was a pleasing aroma, a special gift presented to him. Presented to the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded him. Then Moses presented the other ram, which was the ram of ordination. Aaron and his sons laid their hands on the ram's head, and Moses slaughtered it. Then Moses took some of the blood and applied it to the lobe of Aaron's right ear, the thumb of his right hand, and the big toe of his right foot. Next, Moses presented to Aaron's sons and applied some of the blood to the lobes of their right ear, the thumbs of their hands, and the big toes of their right foot. He then splattered the rest of the blood on all the sides of the altar. Then Moses took the fat, including the fat of the broad tail, the fat around the internal organs, the long lobe of the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat around them, along with the right thigh. On top of these, he placed a thin cake of bread mixed with yeast, a cake of bread mixed with olive oil, a wafer spread with olive oil, and all these were taken from the basket of bread made without yeast that was placed into the Lord's presence. He put these inside the hands of Aaron and his sons, and he lifted these gifts as a special offering to the Lord. Moses then took all the offerings back from them and burned them on the altar on top of the burnt offering. This is the ordination offering. It was a pleasing aroma, a special gift presented to the Lord. Then Moses took the breast and lifted it up as a special offering to the Lord. This was Moses' portion of the ram ordination, just as the Lord had commanded him. Next, Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood that was on the altar, and he sprinkled them on Aaron and his garments and all his sons and their garments. In this way, he made Aaron and his sons and their garments holy. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons, "Boil the remaining meat and offerings at the tabernacle entrance and eat it there, along with the bread that is in the basket offering for the ordination, just as I have commanded." When I said Aaron and his sons will eat it, any meat or bread that is left over must be burned. Any leftover must be burnt up. You may not leave the tabernacle entrance for 7 days, for this is when the ordination ceremony will be complete. Everything we have done today was commanded by the Lord in order to purify you, making you right with him. Now stay at the entrance of the tabernacle day and night for 7 days, and do everything the Lord requires. If you fail to do this, you will die, for this is what the Lord has commanded. So Aaron and his sons did everything the Lord had commanded through Moses. The priests began their work. After the ordination ceremony on the 8th day, Moses called together Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel. He said to Aaron, "Take a young bull for a sin offering and a ram for your burnt offering, both without defects, and present them to the Lord. Then tell the Israelites, take a male goat for a sin offering and take a calf and a lamb, both a year old and without defects, for a burnt offering. Also take a bull and a ram for a peace offering, and flour moistened with olive oil for a grain offering. Present all of these offerings to the Lord, because the Lord will appear to you today." So the people presented all these things at the entrance of the tabernacle, just as Moses had commanded. Then the whole community came forward and stood before the Lord, and Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded you to do, so that the glory of God may appear to you." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Come to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering to purify yourself and the people. Then present the offerings on the people to purify them, making them right with the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded." So Aaron... It's so loud outside. All these morning risers. So Aaron went to the altar and slaughtered the calf as a sin offering for himself. His son brought him the blood and dipped his finger in it and put the horns of the altar. He poured on the rest of the blood at the base of the altar. Then he burned the altar fat, kidney, and the long lobe of liver from the sin offering, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The meat and the hide, however, he burned outside the camp. Next, Aaron slaughtered the animal for the burnt offering. His sons brought him the blood, and he splattered it against each side of the altar. Then he handed him a piece of the burnt offering, including the head and burned them on the altar. Then he washed internal organs and the legs burnt on the altar along with the rest of the burnt offering. Next, Aaron presented the offerings to the people. He slaughtered the people's goats, just as presented in the offering for their sins, just as they had first done with the offering for their own sins. Then he presented the burnt offering, and he sacrificed it in its prescribed way. He also presented the grain offering, burning a handful of the flour mixture on the altar in addition to the regular burnt offering for the morning. Then Aaron slaughtered for the bull the ram of the people, the peace offering. His son brought him the blood, and he splattered it against all the sides of the altar. Then he took the fat of the bull and the ram, the fat of the broad tail from around the internal organs, along the kidney and the long lobe of the liver. He placed these fat portions on top of the breast of the animal and burned them on the altar. Aaron lifted the breast and the right thigh as a special offering to the Lord, just as Moses had commanded him. After that, Aaron raised his hands towards the people and blessed them. Then after presenting the sin offering, the burnt offering, and the peace offering, he stepped down from the altar. Then Moses and Aaron went back to the tabernacle, and when they came out, they blessed the people again, and the glory of the Lord appeared before the whole community. Fire blazed from the whole community's presence, from the whole Lord's presence, and consumed the burnt offering and fat from the altar. When people saw this, they shouted with joy and fell face down on the ground. The sin of Nadab and Abihu. Aaron's son Nadab and Abihu put coal on the fire in their incense burners and sprinkled incense all over them. In this way, they disobeyed the Lord by burning before him the wrong kind of fire, different than he had commanded. So fire blazed forth from the Lord's presence and burned them up, and they died there before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, "This is what the Lord meant when he said, 'I will display my holiness through those who come near me. I will display my glory before all the people.'" And Aaron was silent. Then Moses called for Mishael, Elzaphan, Aaron's cousins, the son of Aaron's uncle Uzziel. He said to them, "Come forward and carry all the bodies of your relatives from the sanctuary to a place outside the camp." So they came forward and picked them up on their garments and carried them outside the camp, just as Moses had commanded. Then Moses said to Aaron and his sons Eleazar and Ithamar, Do not show grief by leaving your hair uncombed or by tearing your clothes. If you do, you will die, and the Lord's anger will strike the whole community of Israel. However, the rest of Israelites, your relatives, may mourn because of the Lord's fiery destruction of Nadab and Abihu. But you must never leave the entrance of the tabernacle, or you will die, for you have been anointed with the Lord's anointing oils. So they did as Moses had commanded. Instructions for the priestly conduct. Then the Lord said to Aaron, you and your descendants must never drink wine or any other alcoholic drinks before going into the tabernacle. If you do, you will die. This is a permanent law for you, and you must observe it from generation to generation. You must distinguish it between what is sacred and what is common, between what is ceremonially unclean and what is clean, and you must teach the Israelites all the decrees that the Lord has given them through Moses. And then Moses said to Aaron and his remaining sons, Eleazar and Ithamar, take what is left of the grain offering after the portion has been presented as a special gift to the Lord, and eat it besides the altar. Make sure it contains no yeast, for it is holy. You must eat it in a sacred place, for it has been given to you and your descendants as the portion of a special gift presented to the Lord. Why are people doing this right now? These are the commands I have given you, but the breast and the thigh were lifted as a special offering, may be eaten in a place that is ceremonially clean. These parts have been given to you and your descendants as a portion of the peace offering presented by the people of Israel. You must lift up the thigh and the breast as a special offering to the Lord, along with the fat of the special gifts. These parts will belong to you and your descendants as your permanent right, just as the Lord has commanded. Moses then asked what had happened to the goat of the sin offering when he discovered it had been burned up. He became very angry with Eleazar, Ithamar, Aaron's remaining sons. Why didn't you eat this sin offering in the sacred area? He demanded. It is the holy offering. The Lord has given it to you to remove the guilt of the community and purify the people, making them right with the Lord. Since the animal's blood was no longer brought into the holy place, you should have eaten the meat in the sacred area as I ordered. So Aaron answered Moses, today my sons presented both their sin offering and their burnt offering to the Lord, and yet this tragedy has happened to me. If I had eaten the people's sin offering on such a tragic day as this, would the Lord have been pleased? And when Moses heard this, he was satisfied. Ceremonially clean and unclean animals. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Of all the land animals, these are the ones you may use for food. You may eat any of the animal that has completely split hooves and chews on the cud. You may not, however, eat the following animals. They have split hooves that chew the cud, but not both. The camels chew the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is ceremonially unclean for you. The hyrax chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The hare chews the cud, but does not have split hooves, so it is unclean. The pig has evenly split hooves, but does not chew the cud, so it is unclean. You may not eat the meat of these animals or even touch their carcasses. They are ceremonially unclean for you. All the marine animals, these are the ones you may use for food. You may eat anything from the water if it has fins and scales, whether taken from the salt water or from the streams, but you must never eat animals from the sea or from the rivers that do not have fins and scales. They are detestable to you. This applies to the little creatures that live in shallow waters and to all the creatures that live in the deep waters. They will always be detestable to you. You must never eat their meat or even touch their dead bodies. Any marine animal that does not have both fins and scales is detestable to you. These are the birds that are detestable to you. You must never eat them. The griffin, vulture, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, falcons of all kind, ravens of all kind, the eagle owl, the short-eared owl, the seagull, hawks of any kind, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the barn owl, the desert owl, the Egyptian vulture, the stork, herons of any kind, the hoopoe, and the bat. You must not eat winged insects as you walk along the ground. They are detestable to you. You may, however, eat winged insects that walk along the ground and have jointed legs so they can jump. The insects you are permitted to eat include all kinds of locusts, bald locusts, crickets, grasshoppers, all winged insects that walk along the ground and are detestable to you. The following creatures will make you ceremonially unclean. If any of you touch their carcasses, you will be defiled until evening. If you pick up the carcasses, you may wash your clothing, but you will remain defiled until evening. Any animal that has split hooves that are not evenly divided or that do not chew on the cud is unclean for you. If you touch the carcass of such an animal, you will be defiled. of the animals that walk on all fours that have paws are unclean. If you touch the carcass of such an animal, you will be defiled until evening. If you pick up its carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until evening. These animals are unclean for you. Of the small animals that scurry along the ground, these are unclean for you: the mole rat, the rat, large lizards, the gecko, monitor slid, the common lizard, the sand lizard, the chameleon. All of these small animals are unclean for you. If any of you touch the dead body of an animal, you will be defiled until evening. If such an animal dies and falls on something, the object will be unclean. This is true whether the object is made of wood, cloth, leather, or burlap. Whatever it is used, you must dip in water, and it will remain defiled until evening. After that, it will be ceremonially clean and may be used again. If such an animal falls into a clay pot, everything in the pot will be defiled, and the pot must be smashed. If the water from such a container spills on any food, the food will be defiled, and any beverage in such a container defiled, and any beverage in such a container were defiled. Any object on which the carcass of such an animal falls will be defiled. If it is in the oven or hearth, it must be destroyed, for it is defiled, and you must treat it accordingly. However, if the carcass of such an animal falls into a spring or a cistern, the water will still be clean, and anyone who touches the carcass will be defiled. If the carcass falls on the seed grain to be placed in the field, the seed will still be considered clean. But if the seed is wet when the carcass falls on it, the seed will be defiled. If an animal you are permitted to eat dies and you touch its carcass, you will be defiled until evening. If you eat any of its meat or carry away its carcass, you must wash your clothes, and you will remain defiled until that evening. Any small animal that scurries along the ground are detestable, and you must never eat them. This includes all animals that slither along on their bellies, as well as those with 4 legs and those with many feet. Such animals that scurry along the ground are detestable, and you must never eat them. Do not defile yourself by touching them. You must make yourself ceremonially unclean because of them. For I am the Lord God. You must consecrate yourselves in the holy, because I am holy. Do not defile yourselves with any of these small animals that scurry along the ground, for I, the Lord, am the one who brought you up here from the land of Egypt, that I might be your God. Therefore you must be holy, because I am holy. These are the instructions regarding land animals, birds, marine creatures, and the animals that scurry along the ground. By these instructions you will know what is unclean and what is clean, and which animal may be eaten and which may not be eaten. Apparently we can't eat pigs, or this is just Aaron couldn't, during that time they couldn't eat pigs. Okay. Purification after childbirth. The Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. If a woman becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son, she will ceremonially be unclean for 7 days, just as she is unclean during her menstrual period. On the 8th day, the woman on the 8th day, the boy's foreskin will be circumcised. After waiting 33 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of the childbirth. During this time, the purification, she must not touch anything that is set apart as holy, and she must not enter the sanctuary until her time of purification. If a woman gives birth to a daughter, she will be ceremonially unclean for 2 weeks, just as she is unclean during her menstrual period. After waiting 66 days, she will be purified from the bleeding of childbirth. When the time of purification is completed for either son or daughter, the woman must bring a 1-year-old lamb for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for purification offering. She must bring her offering to the priest at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will then present them to the Lord to purify her. Then she will be ceremonially clean again after her bleeding at childbirth. These are the instructions for a woman after the birth of a son or a daughter. If a woman cannot afford to bring a lamb, she must bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, or will be a burnt offering and the other for a purification offering. One will be for a burnt offering and the other for a purification offering. The priest will sacrifice them to purify her, and she will be ceremonially cleaned. Serious skin disease. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "If anyone has swelling or rash or disease-colored skin that may develop into serious skin disease, the person must be brought to Aaron and the priest and one of the sons. The priest will examine the affected area of the skin. If it has hair in the affected area has turned white, or the problem appears to be more than skin deep, it is a serious skin disease, and the priest who examines it must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. But if the affected area of the skin is only a white discoloration and does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair on the spot has not turned white, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will make another examination. If he has found the affected area has not changed and the problem has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the priest will make another examination. If you find that the affected area has faded and not spread, the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. It was only a rash. The person's clothing must be washed and the person will be ceremonially clean. But if the rash continues to spread after that person has been examined by the priest and has been pronounced clean, the infected person may return to be examined again. If the priest finds that the rash has spread, he must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, for it is indeed a skin disease. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go to the priest for examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin and there is some hair on the spot turned white, and there is an open sore in the affected area, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, that person need not to be quarantined, for it is obvious that the skin is defiled by the disease. Now, suppose the skin has spread all over the person's skin, covering the body from head to foot. When the priest examines the infected person, he will find the disease covers the entire body. He will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. Since the skin has turned completely white, the person is clean. But if another sore opens or appears, the infected person will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. The priest must then make this pronouncement as soon as he sees an open sore, since open sores indicate the person of a skin disease. However, if the person's sores heals and turn white just like the rest of the skin, the person will return to the priest for another examination. If the affected areas have indeed turned white, the priest will be pronounced to the person ceremonially clean by declaring, "You are clean." If anyone has a boil on the skin that has started to heal, but a white swelling or reddish white spot develops in its place, the person must go to the priest to be examined. If the priest examines it and finds it more than skin deep and the hair in the affected area has turned white, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. The boil has become a serious skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the affected area and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep and has faded, the priest must quarantine the person for 7 days. If during the time the affected area spreads on the skin, the priest must pronounce this person ceremonially unclean because it is a serious disease. But if the area grows no larger and does not spread, it will be merely the scar from the boil, and the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. If anyone has suffered a burn on the skin and the burned area changes color, becoming either reddish white or shiny white, the priest must examine it. If he finds that the hair in the affected area has turned white and the problem appears to be more than skin deep, a skin disease has broken out in the burn. The priest must then pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a serious skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the affected area and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep and has faded, the priest must quarantine the affected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must examine the person again. If the affected area has spread on the skin, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, for it is clear a skin disease. But if the affected area has not changed or spread the skin and has faded, it is a simple swelling from the burn. The person will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean, for it is only the scar from the burn. If anyone, either a man or a woman, has a sore on the head or chin, the priest must examine it. If he finds it has more than a skin deep and it has fine yellow hair on it, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean. If it is a scabby sore of the head or chin, if the priest examines the scabby sore and finds that it is only it is only skin deep and there is no black hair on it, he must quarantine the person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must examine the sore again. If he finds that the scabby sore has not spread and there's no yellow hair on it and it appears to be only skin deep, the person must shave off all the hair except the hair on the affected area. Then the priest must quarantine the person for another 7 days. On the 7th day, he will examine the sore again. If it has not spread and appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest will pronounce the person ceremonially clean. The person's clothing must be washed and the person will be ceremonially clean. But if the scabby sores begins to spread after the person is pronounced clean, the priest must do another examination. If he finds that the sore has spread, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair. The infected person is ceremonially unclean. But if the color of the scabby sore does not change and the black hair has grown on it, it has healed. The priest will then pronounce the person ceremonially clean. If anyone, either man or woman, has shiny white patches on their skin, the priest must examine the affected area. If he finds that the shiny patches are only pale and white, this is harmless skin rash, and the person is ceremonially clean. If a man loses his hair and his head becomes bald, he is ceremonially clean, and if he loses his hair on his forehead, he simply has a bald forehead. He is still clean. However, if there's reddish-white sores on his bald areas of the top of his head or forehead, there's a skin disease. The priest must examine him, and if he finds swelling around the reddish-white sore anywhere the man's head and it looks like a skin disease, the man is indeed infected with a skin disease and is unclean. The priest must pronounce him ceremonially unclean because of the sore on his head. Those who suffer from serious skin disease must tear their clothing and leave their hair uncombed. Then they cover their mouths and call out, "Unclean, unclean," as long as the serious disease lasts. Then they will be ceremonially unclean. They must live in isolation in their place outside the camp. Treatment for contaminated clothing. Now suppose mildew contaminates some woolen or linen clothing, woolen or linen fabric, the hide of the animal, or anything made of leather. If the contaminated area in the clothing, the animal hide, the fabric, or the leather article has turned greenish or reddish, it is contaminated with mildew and must be shown to the priest. After examining the affected spot, the priest will put the article in the quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must inspect it again. If the contaminated area has spread, the clothing or fabric or leather is clearly contaminated by a serious mildew and is ceremonially unclean, the priest must burn the item, the clothing, woolen or linen fabric or piece of leather, for it has been contaminated by a serious mildew. It must be completely destroyed by the fire. But if the priest examines it and finds the contaminated area has not spread in the clothing, the fabric, or the leather, the priest will order the object to be washed in quarantine for 7 more days. Then the priest must examine the objects again. If he finds that the contaminated area has not changed color after being washed, even if it did not spread, the object is defiled. It must be completely burned up, whether the contaminated spot is on the inside or outside. But if the priest examines it and finds that the contaminated area has been faded after being washed, he must cut the spot from the clothing, the fabric, or the leather. If the spot later reappears on the clothing, the fabric, or leather article, the mildew is clearly spreading, and the contaminated object must be burned up. But if the spot disappears from the clothing or the fabric or the leather article after being washed, it must be washed again, then it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with mildew, the contaminants, woolen or linen clothing or fabric of anything made of leather. This is how the priest will determine whether these items are ceremonially clean or unclean. Cleansing the skin disease. After the Lord said to Moses, "The following instructions are those seeking the ceremonial purification from skin disease. Those who have been healed must be brought to the priest, who will examine them at a place outside the camp. If the priest finds that someone has healed of a serious skin disease, he will perform a purification ceremony using 2 live birds that are ceremonially clean, a stick of cedar, 2 scarlet yarns, a hyssop branch. The person will order the one bird he slaughtered over a clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the live bird, the cedar stick, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop branch and dip them into blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. The priest will then sprinkle the blood on the dead bird 7 times on the person who's being purified of the skin disease. When the priest has purified the person, he will release the live bird in an open field to fly away. The persons being purified must then wash their clothes, shave off all their hair, and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean and may return to the camp. However, they must remain outside their tents for 7 days. On the 7th day, they must shave all their hair from their heads, including the hair on their beard and eyebrows. They must also wash their clothes and bathe themselves in water. Then they will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day, each person being purified must bring 2 male lambs and 1-year-old female lamb, all with no defects, along with a grain offering of 6 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil and a cup of olive oil. Then the officiating priest will present the person for purification along with the offering before the Lord at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take one of the male lambs and the olive oil and present them as a guilt offering, lifting them up with a special offering before the Lord. Then he will slaughter the male lamb in the sacred area where the sin offering and burnt offering are slaughtered. As with the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is the most holy offering. The priest will then take some of the blood from the guilt offering and apply it in the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot on the person being purified. Then the person will pour some of the olive oil in the palm of his own left hand. He will dip his right finger in the oil in his palms and sprinkle some of his finger 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is in the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe on the right foot, and the person being purified. The person will apply the blood remaining in his hand and the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest must present the sin offering to purify the person who was cured of the skin disease. After that, the priest will slaughter the burnt offering and the offering on the altar along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person who was healed, and the person will be ceremonially clean. But anyone who is too poor and cannot afford these offerings must bring a male lamb for guilt offering and to be lifted in a special offering for the purifications. The person must also bring 2 quarts of choice flour moistened with olive oil or grain offering, including 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever the person can afford. One of the pair must be used for the sin offering and the other for burnt offering. On the 8th day of purification ceremony, the person being purified must bring the offering to the priest in the Lord's presence at the entrance of the tabernacle. The priest will take the lamb for the guilt offering along with the olive oil and lift them up as a special offering to the Lord. Then the priest will slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering, and he will take some of its blood and apply it to the lobe of the right ear, and the thumb of the right hand, and the big toe of the right foot on the person being purified. The priest will also pour some of the olive oil into the palm of his own hand. He will sprinkle it in his right finger into the oil in his palm, and sprinkle some of it 7 times before the Lord. The priest will then apply some of the oil in his palm over the blood from the guilt offering that is the lobe of the right ear, the thumb of the right hand, the big toe of the right foot, and the person being purified. The priest will apply the oil remaining in his hand to the head of the person being purified. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. Then the priest will offer the 2 turtle doves of the young pigeons, whichever the person can afford, one of them for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, to be presented along with the grain offering. Through this process, the priest will purify the person before the Lord. These are the instructions for the purification for those who have recovered from serious skin disease and who cannot afford to bring the offerings normally required for the ceremony of purification. Treatment of the contaminated houses. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you arrive to Canaan, the land I am giving you as your own possession, and I may contaminate some of the houses in your land with mildew, the owner of such a house must then go to the priest and say, 'It appears that my house has gotten some kind of mildew.' Before the priest goes to inspect the house, he must have the house emptied so nothing inside will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. Then the priest will go and examine the mildew on the walls. If he finds a greenish or reddish streaks and the contamination appears to go deeper than the wall surface, the priest will step outside the door and put the house in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will return for another inspection. If he finds that the mildew on the walls of the house has spread, the priest must order the stones from those areas to be removed. The contaminated material will then be taken outside the town in the area designated as ceremonial unclean. Next, the inside of the walls of the entire house must be scraped thoroughly and the scrapings dumped into the unclean place outside the town. Other stones will be brought in to replace the ones that were removed, and the walls will be replastered. But if the mildew appears after the stones have been replaced and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must return and inspect the house again. If he finds that the mildew has spread, the walls are clearly contaminated with serious mildew, and the house has been defiled, it must be torn down, and all its stone, timbers, and plasters must be carried out of the town in a place designated as ceremonially unclean. Those who enter the house during the period of quarantine will be ceremonially unclean until evening, and all who sleep or eat in the house must wash their clothing. But if the priest returns for his inspection and finds that the mildew has not reappeared in the house after the fresh plastering, he will pronounce it clean because the mildew is clearly gone. To purify the house, the priest must take 2 birds, a stick of cedar, some scarlet yarn, and a hyssop branch. He will slaughter one of the birds over the clay pot filled with fresh water. He will take the cedar stick, the hyssop branch, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird and dip them into the blood of the slaughtered bird and into fresh water. Then he will sprinkle the house 7 times. When the priest has purified the house in exactly this way, he will release the live birds in the open fields outside the town. Through this process, the priest will purify the house and it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with serious skin diseases, including scabby sores, the mildew, whether on clothing and houses, and swelling on the skin or rash or discolored skin. This procedure will determine whether a person or object is ceremonially clean or unclean. These are the instructions regarding the skin diseases and mildew.